my name is Kit Sadgrove and today I'm interviewing Pete Bevan. Pete, how long have you been a window cleaner for?
I've been doing window cleaning now for 5 years March.
How did you get into window cleaning?
Well, I was a publican beforehand.
Were you?
And when I sold the pub, I didn't have a job to do. Mm-hmm. And one of my customers, who was 73, was a local window cleaner, and he didn't want to let his customers down, so he asked if I wanted to take over his round. And I said, well, not the sort of thing I'd ever done before, because I've always worked indoors, dealing with public, mostly in shops and everything. But he said, well, if you come along and work with me, if you like the job, take it on. If you don't, walk away.
Did he charge you for that?
He charged me for it, yeah. I paid a nominal fee for his round.
Okay. Now, if you were going to get into the window cleaning business, though, most people would not find a window cleaner who was about to retire, would they?
Correct, yeah.
So they'd have to go and find around for themselves. What would you say were the advantages of being a window cleaner?
Well, number one, you're your own boss.
Yeah.
No pressure, because you work when you want to work. You're responsible for your own work, so it's up to you how hard you want to work. And if you like the outside, it's fabulous. I've never been so fit.
What about disadvantages?
Disadvantages is weather, basically. If it's really, really cold, frosty or ice, you can't work, and if it's raining, you can't work. But what I've learned to do over the years is, when it is raining, I've got a list of customers that want the inside of their windows cleaned. So I always save them for the rainy days.
Okay. So let's say I wanted to set up a window cleaning business. How would I find out, do you think, if there was a demand for window cleaning? Would you go and put postcards in windows to see if people said, yes, I need my windows cleaned? Or
yes,
would you...
I think that's the first thing you want to do. To find out local demand is, it's always good to go into the local paper shop or post office and put a card up there, because 90% of local people read those. Another good way of finding demand is the local free magazines, which is quite willing to put an advert in for you and even test the water from there.
So you would then find people in a certain area who would be ringing you, and you'd say, obviously there's no one covering that area.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So you just say, and you could just say window cleaner, such and such an area, telephone your phone number.
Yes, I mean, I've talked to other window cleaners that started up, and the way that they did it was the fact that they had moved into the area. So they said, window cleaner just moved into the area, looking for new business, is available, and leave the telephone number and everything else.
How big a territory do you think a window cleaner would need? Is there a number of houses or geographical size or what?
Well, it all depends on what their circuit's going to be. I mean, I work on a 6-week circuit, and I work on what I...
That's to say you would visit every house every 6 weeks?
Every 6 weeks. That's providing that the weather is perfect. If in a perfect world, it's 6 weeks. On average, I would say it's 7, maybe 8 weeks, by the time you've added a bit of the weather in between. What you need to do is work out what you want to earn, and then you work on your customers on that, because you can always have too many customers and not service your customers properly.
Absolutely. Okay. Right. So what happens if you found that there was an existing window cleaner in the area? Would you just go and look for an area that window cleaner was not working in, or would you actually set up in competition, or what do you think?
Well, it all depends. In the four and a half years that I've been working up to date, there's lots of window cleaners about. I come across them, they come across me, and we all intermingle on the patch. You'll find if there's a local window cleaner, you can't cover every house that's going. And
so in one street, in 20 houses in a street, you might find that there are 3 window cleaners actually on working that street.
Oh yes, especially if you're in the town, very, very easily. Not so much in the villages that do, but I do Wedmore as it is, and I think there's another 2 window cleaners that come into the village.
And that's for a village of only 500 houses?
500 houses.
Okay. So in a bigger city,
streets can be shared.
Okay.
And you'll find that it's a personal thing when you become a window cleaner, because when a customer knows you and trusts you and works that way, then you'd find they're quite loyal, and you know, you don't lose a lot of customers.
So being friendly with your customers, that's important?
Oh, very important, yes. I mean, I quite often get the little tasks like they've got some leaves up in the gutter, could I take them out while I'm there? 5-minute job. As long as you're not going to spend hours cleaning the whole gutter, you don't charge them, it's personal service.
Okay. So what kind of customers have you got? Are they mainly domestic?
95% of mine are domestic, yes.
And is that true of window cleaners generally, do you think?
You usually find there's two types of window cleaners. There's a window cleaner that does the domestic, or there's a window cleaner that does the commercial. Very rarely do you get the two mixing, because it's a different way of working.
So a kind of contract business type office window cleaner, how would they, in what way are they different?
They have to abide by a different set of rules. They're much more restricted to health and safety, what they can do on other people's premises, the height that they can go up to, what they can use when they go up to. Most of them use water-fed poles now.
And is that a more commercial kind of business?
That's much more commercial, and you usually find that it's contractors where they employ people to do that rather than the self-employed.
Okay. So a domestic window cleaner is more likely to be a one-man band?
One-man band, yeah.
Okay, all right. What kind of size of area, would you just cover just particularly what this village we're talking about?
No, I cover an area from Wattsfield to one end of my thing to Godney on the other, which is about, I expect about 12-mile radius, which incorporates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 villages.
And that's because it's a very rural area?
Yeah.
If you were in a city or a town, you would expect to have a smaller area?
Oh yeah, much more. You could be just one estate, half an estate, 3 or 4 roads.
So the advantage of being a window cleaner, particularly in a town or a city, is you actually be able to roll out of bed in the morning and not have to go very far.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do very little mileage. I mean, I'm up and down my road all the time, but if you actually add the mileage together, it's not a great deal.
Yeah, okay. So how many active customers would you be likely to have at any one time? Because you'd said you've got to be able to service them all within a cycle, haven't you?
Well, when I took over the round, I had about 140, 150, and I've now got 320.
Okay. Are there any kind of customers that you might avoid?
Yes, there's always the good customers and there's always your bad customers. There's the ones that want you to sort of go out and risk leg, limb and everything else for no reward, which it's not worth it. It's your life, you've got to stay healthy and you've got to take the risk yourself, so be careful on that side.
So you must be able to say no to certain kinds of requests? Yes. Okay. Did you ever, so would you ever get rid of a customer?
I have. I've got rid of the odd one or two, but that's only generally down to it's the payment side of it. You know, I mean, if they don't pay. So
they owe you money, and you ask the money,
and you come round and you knock on the door and bits and pieces, and it's 4 or 5 months down the road before you get anything. Then you think, is it worth?
So you simply wouldn't come back and do their windows. Okay. So Pete, what kind of hours do you work?
Myself, I start at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I finish around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's a very short working day, isn't it?
It is, but most of the time I work on my own. I have someone that helps me now and then. Basically, I don't stop. I go on and I get it done.
So that would be more equivalent to a much longer working day.
Oh yeah, if I took a tea break in the morning and had an hour for lunch and tea break in the afternoon, it'd be 4 or 5 o'clock before I finish.
And because it's your business, it's in your interest then to get through the work as quick as
possible. I mean, I'm one of these people, I like to work early and finish early, and then I've got the afternoon and evening to myself.
Okay. So generally you've actually got quite a lot of spare time then, haven't you?
Oh yes, lots of spare time, yeah.
Okay. So do you ever then think that there are other people who are like maybe stuck in an office and they've got to work from 9 till 5 and they can't get out, they can't do what they want to do? Do you feel you have a lot more freedom than they do?
Oh, a lot more. My partner, she works in Bristol. And she leaves home at 7:30 in the morning. She gets home at 7:15 at night. And that's her day, 5 days a week.
Yeah. So do you ever get asked, talking about the work itself, do you ever get asked to do things other than window cleaning? We talked about guttering, for example, and gardening or anything like that?
I quite often get asked if I know anyone that's doing gardening or even decorating and things like that, because once you get to know your customer, the first person they ask for local advice is the person they see on a regular basis.
So if someone was hugely ambitious, say, they could actually use window cleaning in theory as a way of starting up more businesses or hiring more people if they were prepared to take on the responsibility and anxiety of dealing with other people.
Exactly. I mean, I could, in the time that I've done it, I could easily be employing 5 or 6 people doing my job. It's the pain of employing people personally for myself that I didn't want to get into.
So you'd be happier just doing the work yourself, taking that money and saying that's what I need, yeah. Okay. So does the work come and go at all, or do people generally happy to have their windows cleaned on a permanent basis, regularly?
It is like anything. I mean, the biggest fluctuation I get is because the area we live in is quite a commuter area for Bristol. You'll find people coming in and people leaving. So they're there for a couple of years and then they've moved on. Most of the time when someone leaves, I always go back afterwards when the new people move in and introduce myself, saying I used to clean for so-and-so, would they like me to continue? Most of them do, but sometimes some people say, no, I'd like to do it myself. So.
What about seasonality? Does that have an impact?
Yes, definitely seasonality.
So is that like people are on holidays or dark nights or what?
It's not so much holidays and that, because I can still do them when people are on holidays, because once they get you into a regular pattern, as long as you do it regularly, they're happy. And if I do it and they're not there, I just leave the calling card saying that I've done the windows, and I see them the next time I do the windows, and they usually pay up. Seasonality is basically weather-wise and light-wise, you know, and that's where it's in. So in the summer you can work longer hours, and I tend to work slightly longer in the summer, trying to build up a bit of fat that keeps me going through the winter when the days are darker and wetter, and you're not actually working every week.
So there might be some days when actually you can't get out, to work, but in that case you would look for a bit of other work like internal window cleaning. Or
yes, I've over the years I've built up a list of my customers. I say to them that because when you clean windows outside, that's on a regular basis, but inside they only want it done once, maybe twice a year. It's not so often because they don't get quite so dirty. So I always say to them, rather than do it in the middle of the summer when it's nice and dry, in the winter months when I've got wet days, if I give you a ring, would you like me to come round and do your windows? And I make a list that way, and that keeps me going during the wet days.
Talking about earnings, how would you set your price?
It's difficult to set a price without seeing the house. I always try to work on a set figure per hour. What it would take me by myself to do the house. And that's the way I do it. So most of the time if I price in a house, I will say to a customer, well, I'll clean the windows for you and I'll tell you how much it is at the end of it. And then if we agree, we'll continue or haggle if they think it's a bit too much or not enough. But I usually have a set fee.
And are people price sensitive or not?
Some people are, but I think most people, if you do a decent job, they don't worry about the price of it. All they want is to have the windows done without having to do it themselves and done properly.
Okay. And does it tend to be people who are cash rich, time poor, or the elderly, or is it everyone?
It's everyone. I mean, mine range from youngsters who've just got married, but they're both having to work because of the mortgage and everything else, so they can't afford the time to do it themselves. And right out to the age of the pensioners that can't physically do it themselves.
And in this day and age, more people don't want to do these kind of jobs, do they, for themselves?
They don't want to do manual work.
No,
A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. I mean, I hadn't done manual work for a long time. I actually been a publican and working that way, but I work for the Pru as well. But it's a physical work. You've got to be fairly fit to do it, but it keeps you fit as well.
Is it possible to say how much a window cleaner would earn, or does it depend on how many hours you want to work and how much you want to put your prices up?
It all depends on exactly how long. I mean, you've got to earn a good living. I mean, I work roughly on a basic rate of about £25 an hour, which is not a bad rate for anyone. But when you take it into perspective, that includes travelling time. It also includes days when you can't work. So it physically works down.
Yeah. But a lot of people would be quite envious about it.
Very envious. Yes. I mean, the sky's the limit. If you want to start at 8 o'clock in the morning and finish at 6 or 7 o'clock at night in the summer, and you've got the work to do, you can earn good money.
Okay. So you wouldn't want to go back to being employed?
No. I was employed for quite some time until I took the pub on, and I was self-employed for myself. And the difference between the pub and what I do now, the pub was 24/7, and I never had weekends off, never had bank holidays off, never had a Christmas off. Now I have all the leisure time that I didn't have.
And if you want to take a day off, absolutely no one's going to say no.
No.
No one's going to even know.
No, absolutely, it's entirely up to you. The only thing you've got to realise when you're doing it, and you've got to work for this, if you don't work, you don't get paid. You have a holiday, you don't get paid. So you've got to balance the two so that you can live.
Yeah. So do you think a lot of window cleaners probably do that? They probably got a mental picture as to how much they need to earn, and they want to simply adjust the amount of work they do, possibly,
Yes.
to that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all depends on what your goals are. Like I say, if you can build up a big enough round, the sky's the limit of what you can actually earn if you physically want to do it. It's entirely... I mean, I've done my 24/7 for 14 years, so now I've taken it a little bit easier, and I earn a good living, but I also have a lot of quality time for myself now, which I never used to have, and that's the bonus.
Okay. Can we talk about the process? The process of actually going out and cleaning windows. About the steps that you would take. So you've got a route that you would go around.
Yeah.
So tomorrow you would have it in mind that there was a particular set of houses you're going to go around. Okay. There are issues about height restriction these days, aren't there? The working at height regulations, and therefore, does this mean that you would tend to avoid doing higher windows, or would you use poles, or what?
I personally don't use water-fed poles myself, basically because I don't think they clean the windows as well as I do the job how I would like my own house done. I'm very proud on that type of thing, and. Yes, if I see a house that I can't reach the windows, I turn to the customer and say, look, I'm sorry, but those windows are out of my reach. I can do up to a certain height, but above that, I'm afraid, sorry, I can't do it. And they're quite understanding most of the time.
Okay. So would you clean using a squeegee or a cloth or what?
I use both. The bulk of the time I tend to use a chamois leather and a cloth, because I think that they do a better job than a squeegee. But a squeegee is very, very useful if you've got big panes of glass, big solid panes of glass that are too big to just go over a cloth because they dry too quickly.
Okay, all right. Okay. What about cleaning fluids? Are there any particular fluids you would use, or is it whatever is around?
No. On the odd occasion I might use a bit of fairy liquid, that's about it.
Right.
Yeah, but most of the time all I've got is a chamois, a cloth which is a scrim, which is a special type of cloth which is very, very good for cleaning windows, and plain water, because if you use plain water on a window it won't leave greasy marks or anything else. If it dries clean.
Okay. All right. And so you would bring, I mean, there's very little a window cleaner needs. You need those, and you need a bucket.
I've got two or three different size buckets depending whether I'm using a squeegee or whether I'm using a chamois leather. I carry a jerry can full of hot water. I fill up with hot water in the morning, and that usually lasts me about half a day, and then if I go on the afternoon I fill it up again to go.
So you wouldn't ask the householder, can I borrow your tap, can I use your tap, can I carry?
Very rarely, very, very rarely.
Okay. And so would you use the hot water into the, would you kind of add it to to a cold water, or would you?
Well, no, because I always fill my jerry can up with hot water in the morning, and by lunchtime it's lukewarm. But usually it's colder in the morning, so it's nice to have some warm water in the bucket, keeps your hands warm. And
you use that water, so you solely use that hot water. You wouldn't add cold water to it or anything else.
No, on the odd occasion I use someone's outside tap if it's too hot to start with, or if we're in the middle of summer when it's really hot, then I might just cold water.
Okay. And is it more professional, do you think, not to have to borrow the householder's water, or is it that you can get to where you want to be faster?
I think it's not more professional. I think the reason being, in the area we live, a lot of people are out working, so they're not in. So you might not have access to water. So if you haven't got your own water when you turn up, you might not be able to do the windows if you rely on the customer. So if you've got your own, you know that you can get there and you can do the windows.
Okay. All right. Do you use gloves at all?
In the winter I do, yes.
Okay. All right. And what about kind of clothes? Are there particular clothes you might want to wear if it's going to be raining or if it's variation in temperatures? Just
No, because you don't usually work when it's raining outside because it makes the ground slippery and your ladder slippery, so it makes it dangerous. So, and also you can't dry the windows properly. So basically, it's in the summer it's shorts and a t-shirt, and in the winter you put on as much clothes as you need to keep warm.
Okay. And so you clean the windows. If the person is in, you would then knock on the door and say this is how much it is, and would you give them a receipt or anything like that?
If they ask for a receipt, I give them a receipt.
Okay.
If they don't, then I don't bother.
And if they're out, you would leave a note saying
If they're out, I have a calling card saying that I've called today, I've cleaned your windows, and that's the price.
And you would hope that next time you came around, they would pay for the last time and this time?
Not always the case. I usually tell my customers that if I don't catch them in during the day, I'll call round in the evening. And I usually call round once, maybe twice, either that evening or the next evening. If I haven't caught them in there and I know they're a good customer, rather than keep calling backwards, I leave it to the next time.
Okay. Do you need to take a float with you for change?
I do for change, yes.
Okay. All right. What about a vehicle? Do you need a particular van or any?
The vehicle I use is an old Sierra, but the reason I use an old vehicle is because I'm carrying water and everything else. It gets slopped all around. I've got a roof rack with ladders on it and they get banged against it and everything else, so it's a waste of time using what I class as a good vehicle, although a lot of people use vans to do it. But any vehicle that can take a ladder comfortably.
So if you were starting up then as window cleaner, there'd be no point in rushing out and buying a very expensive van or a very expensive vehicle?
My Sierra that I did cost me £300 when I bought it, and I've had 4 years out of it.
So keeping the cost down gives you more profit?
Of course it does, yeah.
Okay. Right. What about sign painting? Is it a good idea to have a van with a sign painting on it that people notice you, do you think?
I think so sometimes. I haven't actually got that on mine, although my brother has, who, when I started up my van, got so big that I sold half of it to my brother, and he works in the Cheddar area doing that, and he's actually got his van sign painted. But I don't. But I have a clothes where I'm a window cleaner on it, which helps identify who you are when you're walking up a pathway, especially if it's an older woman and she wants to see who's coming up the pathway.
Okay. Talking about the marketing then, you expanded your business. How did you do that?
Well, when I started, when I bought the round off the person who retired, there was enough for him to do when he was 73, but not enough for me to live on as a thing. So what I did, I generated the business by every time I cleaned a house, I dropped a leaflet each side. And quite often the next door neighbour said, "Oh, I didn't realise you were doing it," and you got it, and then you drop one the next side. I also did leaflet drops on estates, like on the small estate in Wedmore. I dropped a leaflet drop in there, and I advertised in the local Wedmore News, and also in Mark Post Office, Wedmore Post Office.
So a bit of marketing goes quite a long way.
Oh yes, it brought a lot of work in.
So much so that you really weren't able to handle all of it.
Exactly. I got so busy. That's why I brought my brother in. And when he came in with the two of us working, we built it up until it was big enough to split the rounds into two, rather than be a partnership, which I personally didn't want to get into. We split the round up, and he took one half on, and I got one half as well. So.
Because if you've got a partnership, you've then got to have at the back of your mind, is this other person working with
as hard and as much and doing the thing, doing the job properly.
Okay. So as you get more established in the business, you then had less need to go and do that kind of marketing.
Oh yes, because once I've been in it a couple of years, most of my business came in from word of mouth. Customer told someone else I was a window cleaner, I was good.
So referrals are a good way once you're established.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because that customer's already made for you.
Exactly, because it's like anything in life. If someone recommends something to you, you tend to listen to someone you know rather than have to find out for yourself.
Or rather than reading an advertisement where someone is only puffing their own services anyway. Okay. Staffing. You have from time to time you've used someone else when?
Yeah, I've got a part-time worker that works for me. He's how can I put it without being rude? He's got a medical problem where he's got this anger management problem, and he finds it very difficult to work in crowds. He can't work with crowds. He gets very frustrated and blows up. So I work him on a part-time basis, and that gives him out, gives him something to do, and he's a very good worker. He loves doing it.
And he will enable you to do peak periods or peak times? Or?
Yes, and also the bigger houses where you need someone to foot the ladder. If you've got something that's slightly dodgy and it's not safe to put a ladder up, and you're there on your own with no one else around, it's nice to have the comfort that someone's there.
Yeah. So just talking about larger houses and so on, what about conservatories? Are you asked to do conservatories?
Yes, I do conservatories, conservatory roofs, any part of the conservatory.
And are those more difficult than a straightforward vertical window?
The roofs they can be awkward in certain places, but then I don't use a water-fed pole for those, but I use an extending pole. And I also have a hose pipe in the car with a reel so that you can sort of scrub the roof and then wash it off.
Would you use a pressure washer at all?
You can use a pressure washer, but I tend to find that you never get one long enough or to reach in the right places.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to talk about records. If I was going to start a window cleaning business, what would I need to do to keep a record?
Well, when I first started, I just kept a round book. And it had the round in the list of it, the customer, how much it was, and I used to put the date in that I cleaned it, end of each day, total it up, and that was my daily totals. But since then, for the last 18 months, I bought a package on the internet called Window Clean Professional, and it's absolutely fabulous. It cost me 90 quid, that's it, and it keeps all your customers in, what the price is, when they were last clean, when they're due again, if they owe you any money, and it flags up if you're running late on them, and it also does your accounts as well. So at the end of the year you just press 2 or 3 buttons and it prints it all out, which is good enough.
So you would go to that once a day or once every few days?
Every day when I finish, I come in, I just pull it up. It's like an access database. I just put the round in because I have each round separate. It brings up the list of that round. You just click on the name and you just press Windows Clean, and it automatically posts the charge to that person. And if they've paid you, you put in the money that they've paid you. If you haven't paid you, you just tell it to accept it, and it flags it up as red that they haven't paid.
And you would take the cash that you generate during the day and pop it into the bank?
No, I don't usually generate that much, but I usually bank once a week. Personally, being in the village, it's not so easy to get to them.
No. What about keeping records of expenses?
That's easy. I mean, basically, it's just equipment and diesel and car expenses.
So simple business, really.
Simple, because there's not a great outlay on anything that you do.
Okay. What about, do you use a bookkeeper at all? Do you do all your own books, really, with help of this program?
I do this, but I do have an accountant once a year. Okay. I just give him everything and he fills in my tax form. Okay,
so would you keep all your records in a ring binder or a shoebox?
In a ring binder.
Okay, all right. And would you separate that by months or just, day by day you keep on adding to
months.
it?
I usually sort of each month at a time.
Okay, so you'd have a divider for each month or whatever, okay. And so would you operate as a sole trader?
Yes.
Yeah, because there's no point in becoming a limited company with all the extra paperwork that will be involved.
Exactly.
All right. And then what about paying tax? I mean, would you would do a self-assessment, or your accountant would do a self-assessment, and the government would then say how much you owe them.
Yes.
So would you put money aside to pay tax?
I have a separate bank account where every week I put roughly about 25% of what I earn into that, and at the end of the year it pays my tax. And if anything's left over, then I go on holiday.
Because so someone setting up in business would need to know that they need to put money aside to pay tax.
You do.
Because otherwise, if you spend all the money you get...
I quite agree. I learned that the first year. First year I was doing it, money was coming in, and I had my tax bill. And I had to sort of find the money. So after that, I learned that if you put it aside and you make sure you do it regularly, you don't miss it. And put it somewhere separate. Don't put it in your normal account where you can get hold of it. I put it into a savings account where the only way I can physically take the money out is actually go to the bank, take it out. And that way, it's done. You don't miss it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So avoiding mistakes. So is there anything you wish you'd known that you now know when you first started?
I think basically, like everything in the first year I got caught tax at the end of the year, and also my first winter, you suddenly realise that you do get winters in this country, and some days you're not going to be earning any money. So basically, I've learned to save and
find alternative work.
Find alternative, something to do.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there one piece of advice then that you might give to someone who was thinking of setting up? Would it be to think about the tax, or to be aware of winter?
If you were starting up, I would say make sure that you plan for the future as you go. Don't do it all in one go. Make sure that you've always got something just in case, because you never know whether you're going to be off for one day, or you could be off for a whole week, you could be off for a fortnight, depending on what the weather is like. So plan, make sure that you've always got that little bit to keep you going. And not only that, have something to do when you've got the days, because you get bored of anything, sitting indoors doing nothing. I'm one of these people that don't like sitting still. So I'm actually lucky I play golf. So even when it's wet, I can put my togs on and I can go out and play golf.
Okay. Do window cleaners ever fail, or is it a business where you really have to be pretty stupid to fail?
They can do, but it's what you put into it. If you don't put the effort into it, you'll fail, because if you don't keep regular contact with your customers, they're going to turn and say, I'm sorry, but I want them done regularly, and they'll go elsewhere.
So you have to like the business as well then?
Yes.
And that means probably liking the outdoors?
It's liking being outside, it's liking your own company, because a lot of the time you're turning up at houses, you're the only one there, there's no one in, so you've just got to get on, and you've got to be self-motivated. Because if you sit down and think the windows are going to come to you and clean themselves, they don't. You have to physically go out to the window and do it.
Okay, all right. Do you ever get any complaints at all from householders?
Oh yeah, but I've had a few, where sometimes if the sun is strong, you can't quite see what you've done, and you walk away and you've left a smear on it. And I've had customers phone me up and say, look, I'm sorry, but the window wasn't done properly. Always apologise, go back and do it. And as long as you don't make a fuss of it and you just go back and do the job, they're happy.
Yeah, okay, all right. Pete, what would you think you'd be doing in 5 years' time? Can you think that far ahead?
Yeah, I'll still be doing this. This is my job till I retire now.
Excellent. Okay. Good. And is there anything else we haven't covered? Or do you think we've gone through most of the things that one would need to talk about?
I think we've gone through most of it. The only thing I can say is when you're window cleaning, just be careful. It is a dangerous job. It's one of the most dangerous occupations that there are in this country if you look at statistics. Never do anything that you feel uncomfortable with. Always work within your own bounds. If the job's too hard, tell them. They're quite happy if you tell them. Don't say, oh, I can do it, and you struggle and you lean. You do it. That's when you have the accident. That's when you break something. That's when you're out of work. You've got no money coming in. So your health and safety is important.
So not going up too high.
Not going up to.
Making sure the ladder is firmly,
not taking risks.
Not taking risks, and not leaning.
Not leaning.
Okay. Pete, thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're welcome.